Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 33. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
And until recently, social media was touted as a new and innovative tool designed to bring people together in ways we had never previously thought possible. For the first time, people were no longer separated by vast distances. In an instant, we could connect with family and friends we would otherwise not have seen or heard from. And even better, social media could be used to bring about positive change or to inform the public of important events. Consider the Arab Spring Uprising as one example. According to an article published by Pew in 2012, the importance of social media was in communicating to the rest of the world what was happening on the ground during the uprisings, quote unquote. But things have changed. While it arguably still holds true that social media is often responsible for disseminating news quicker than most traditional news outlets, take for example US Airways Flight 1549 in January of 2009, when a Twitter user broke the news of Captain Sully safely landing his plane and its 155 passengers on the River Hudson a full 15 minutes before mainstream media, Facebook announced last month it can't guarantee social media is on the whole good for democracy. And according to Reuters, the sharing of false or misleading headlines on social media has become a global issue after accusations that Russia tried to influence votes in the US, Britain, and France, quote unquote. And even more worrisome is social media's tendency to create echo chambers where people become self-segregated and polarized, seeking out only those who tend to confirm their own biases for better or worse. Added to this is the ease with which false information delivered in neat, memeable packages can rapidly go viral, or the recent dangerous mobilization toward the court of public opinion, where mere allegation is sometimes enough to try and convict someone. With that said, can we expect social media to somehow return to its roots as a way to connect one another in the digital age, or will it continue to drive people further apart? These intros are getting longer.
No, good write-up, though.
I'd like to say, for example, you brought up the idea that but things have changed, and I would suggest things are constantly in a state of change anyways, and there wasn't anything solid in the first place, and I really see no difference. We were always mentally manipulated with other things, and yeah.
Sure, but I mean, tools are things that make our actions easier, right? And while
that's what
we
they're
may have
supposed to
been
be for.
manipulated before, or while things weren't necessarily as they seemed, while propaganda has always existed, we didn't necessarily have the capacity for scale that we do now, or for specificity, and you know, so I think there are material differences with the changes that happen. It's not just change for change's sake, and I think it's something worth maybe understanding and working to correct or something.
Well, I like the idea of referring to it as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying basically it's a bigger tool, more used by everyone. So it's a more unanimous tool, almost, kind of thing. Excuse me.
It's a pretty wide-reaching tool. I mean, if you consider the billions of users on Facebook alone.
Yeah, and just because more people have access to this tool doesn't mean that everybody is equally capable of using the tool to their ends, or using it as effectively.
Right. Effectively for what, though? Like, this is what I'm wondering. What are we building with the tool? Like, it's all us.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. Like, if we want to, let's focus on the echo chamber aspect of it, just to start off with, because I think it's an important thing to talk about. Like, we tend to seek out information that corresponds to our way of thinking, and this is particularly true when it comes to looking up news stories or information on social media. That people share stories they agree with and not the ones they disagree with, right?
Right.
And like as an internet thing, Facebook in particular learns your habits. It learns what you share the most, and it'll keep feeding you these stories that kind of match up to what you've been sharing, right? So in doing so, it just keeps feeding your bias.
I suppose. So it's kind of like social media is comparable to junk food in the sense that it just keeps on feeding us that snacky food that we want, and it becomes less and less nutritious as it goes along because it's all full of sugar and salt, basically. So social media is sugar and salt.
Yeah,
heavily.
Yeah. It's junk food.
It doesn't have to be, though. That's the thing.
It's
and it
junk
is
food
also
society.
Other things. Yeah. So what's being pushed is sugar and salt, I guess we could say. It's like an auto push. It's automatically being shot at us.
Yeah.
Right.
But those algorithms and stuff, they can be used to different ends too. If you like flood the market, then the things that people are choosing from to make up their profile of what they tend to click on, if you flood the market with a particular kind of media, then they're choosing from a limited scope of choices, right? That you've manipulated. So
it's always limited, but you're saying the direction is
right. So it's not necessarily that everybody can just naturally have their own echo chamber be tailored just merely to what they themselves chose. Their choices can be manipulated so that without them even realizing it, the echo chamber becomes imposed on them in ways that they might not naturally have chosen.
Yeah, a prime example of that is just yesterday that 13 Russians who were indicted of
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, they were indicted yesterday of spreading
Big news.
yeah, big news. It's fake news. It's fake news. No,
I mean, this totally vindicates everyone who understood what was going on with the Russian meddling, and it completely puts the lie to all these people that have been constantly deflecting and calling the Russia story fake news and a quote unquote narrative.
right.
Yeah.
Their intention was to sow discord, which, the case can be made that they certainly...
Well, not only Discord.
Wow.
So first, their intention was to
It was also to influence public opinion, right? It was heavily to influence public opinion.
But first, it was to defeat the Democrats and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, the allegations didn't go so far as to say, it was specifically to, to win the election. But obviously, you can draw that conclusion.
So there was that press conference by the Republican guy who was saying what the allegations were in the indictments. And while he makes a point of saying that influence happened on both sides, like both for Bernie Sanders and for Donald Trump, he omits rather glaringly the context of that kind of influence.
Right.
Because before the election, it was all 100% for the Republicans' benefit and Donald Trump's benefit. And when it starts benefiting both sides, quote unquote, that only happens after the horses are out of the barn and Donald Trump has been elected.
Yeah.
So then it's only to sow discord in the society. So they start feeding into like the anti-Trump
it was
women's marches and stuff like that, and fomenting that kind of
definitely
discord.
a multi-pronged approach to this. And it goes as far back as 2014 is when they're alleged to have started meddling.
Yeah.
And, it's really interesting. Like, they bought fake social media accounts. They posed as Americans and started propagating all this information, which was then itself redistributed to people who already subscribed to these echo chambers. And that just, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, right?
Yeah.
It was a well-orchestrated kind of social media campaign, which just goes to show the influence that social media has. And that brings up the second point that I talked about.
Or the vulnerability of social media.
Right, and that brings up the point of whether or not social media is in fact good for democracy. Facebook itself last month came out and admitted that on the whole, we can't guarantee that we are.
So what that suggests to me is that they're basically claiming, in a sense, it is good for democracy, but what we're doing with democracy is not good. Does that make sense? Like, in the sense, social media is democracy. It's just other people are taking advantage of it and doing something else with democracy. And
instead of, I would say it can be a tool for democracy. However, there is no guarantee that it will be used to that end, as is that's evidence.
Right.
Evident
but that's
from
not
what happened in
the
Russia.
issue. Is in a sense, it's always an issue of. Not that social media is a bad thing or anything like that, but we're doing bad things with it.
Right.
Like, there's no problem with it in and of itself, but who's got control
I
of
don't
it
know
and
why
who's
you're
using
why
it?
you're talking about weird though. It's not a wash. Like, it's not a zero sum. Everybody's doing the same thing kind of thing. Some people are doing things maliciously for nefarious ends, and other people are doing things for good or for neutral ends.
I understand.
And you know, like a hammer can be used to build a house, or it can be used to kill someone. You know,
yeah,
like
that's what I'm trying to get at as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's like your example of capitalism that you brought up a lot, or bring up a lot rather.
What's that?
Like capitalism in and of itself isn't bad. It's what we're doing with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you would apply that same logic to.
Yeah, this tool is being used to build something that's shitty, basically.
Right. Yeah. It's also being used for shitty purposes. I guess is
it's
more or less the same thing.
Right.
It's building this shitty thing.
But you can't also ignore that some things about the nature of the tool itself might make it sort of naturally amenable to less beneficial ends or to abuse and things like that. Like take for example the concept of a first past the post electoral system. We know that kind of system automatically leads to a two-party system after several years.
Right.
There's nothing in the idea or the conception of first past the post system that would necessarily tell you that that's what would happen, but naturally that is what happens. It tends towards a system dominated by two parties ultimately.
Right.
Eventually, and the only way to break that is to get rid of the first past the post system and use some kind of alternative vote.
You're talking about our inability to predict what actually happens compared to what we think is going to happen, or
well, no, I think I'll agree with you here that there are like a certain
externalities.
Yeah, like a tool will tend to be used for a particular purpose because it's more amenable for it being used to that end, right? And I think in the example of social media,
unintended consequences.
Exactly. Like the unintended consequence of social media is A, Russian meddling in foreign elections, and B, the dissemination of false information, right? Like it's very easy to spread bullshit on social media because people don't fact check, and they just keep spreading this bullshit. Like one example.
What do you fact check with? But with other fact checking. It's just fact-checking on top of fact-checking and fact-checking on top of fact-checking. And how can we really know what truth is anymore in that sense?
Well, you can because you can independently verify a fact, right?
With what? More social media? More internet? That sources. Is sources coming from where, though? For example?
If you want to get really technical, you can go down to the library or like the archives or whatever and look up this information firsthand.
And believe that.
Not all sources are created equal. I mean, like we can play an infinite regress game, but eventually it's just not true that all sources are just as subjective and just as pulled out of people's actions.
The identification of is based on a person themselves. I guess I'm coming down to it's difficult to know what and where and how to get anything that's of any value and.
Right. Well, there are sources that have been established as credible, right? Like I can't come up with any examples just off the top of my head, but like you said, Jill, not all sources are created equal. There are some that are more credible
think about like the difference between the IPCC, like the International Panel on Climate Change, and the scientific consensus there, and our sources there are scientific journals and research papers, and contrast that with the opposition, where the sources are explicitly fossil fuel industry funded, disinformation,
pro oil lobbies and whatnot,
lobbies and fake research kind of stuff. So.
One is credible, the other isn't.
One is credible, one isn't. They're not.
But one also influences the other as well. And what I'm saying is, and I guess I'm not talking necessarily about you guys looking for information. I'm talking about someone that doesn't speak that language, that doesn't speak in terms of science or whatever the case may be. and is looking for information in terms of what they can understand.
Right, and like this is one of the points I keep touching on is the importance of teaching critical thinking, just in general. Right?
In a sense, because it's always an echo chamber. Like it's always someone shouting out into a room, and what bounces back is something that they can relate to, and that's the only
not
thing
only that. It's just if you believe the first thing that you see, you're just going to get duped throughout the rest of your life, right? Like it's important to have critical reasoning skills in order to eliminate the things that are just not credible. Like if you apply logic to a given claim, right? And is this a reasonable thing to believe? What makes it reasonable to believe? It's you have evidence, you have demonstrable evidence that comports with external reality, right? You have independently verifiable quote unquote facts that you can just check and you can build your case to say this is credible versus this isn't. And if it isn't credible, you reject the claim. Right? Like it's critical reasoning skills are extremely important, and I think they're becoming more important just in the type of political stage that we have these days with like Trump as president. You know, fake news being thrown about just willy-nilly as a term. You know, What is fake news? Well, is it credible? Yes or no? Can you verify the facts being reported in this quote-unquote fake news story? Yes or no? Right? If you can verify the facts, if you can say this thing is credible, right? If there are independent accounts which back up the claim that this story is making, it's not fake anymore, it's actually happening, as is the case with this Russia example that we touched on earlier, right? So, yeah.
I guess I feel like I think of that movie The Post.
Yeah.
And how it's such old news. Like, yeah, we know, and so what can we do with that? I don't know.
I mean, it's old news, but obviously people
done
still haven't gotten the fucking memo. Because it's totally current at the same time.
What I mean is that
Right?
even if we're able to yell into an echo chamber that is correct, it still does nothing and is still only your echo chamber that we can do nothing with.
I want to bring up an example of a persistent piece of misinformation that gets spread around annually, right? It comes about every Easter, and it's this stupid meme that goes around, right? And people just keep posting this thing over and over again, and every year I have to counter it because it's total bullshit. Like the meme claims that the Easter holiday is based on the ancient goddess Ishtar. No, it isn't. It's patently false.
I love how passionately adamant you are about this, and who gives a fuck?
I give a fuck because I give a fuck about what's true. This is not true, and it gets spread around as if it's a fact. But people do not fact check, right? Some guy a historian did a full page counter to this stupid meme, which circulates in conjunction with it as the opposition to it every single year. It's just, okay, this is not a fact. Here's why. This is all the information that says you are wrong, right? This is all verifiable evidence to say, sorry, no, your stupid fucking meme thing that you reposted without checking to see whether or not it's true is false.
Yeah.
Right? That's the importance of fact checking and verifying information. Because if you just spread things, you could be spreading a falsehood.
Well, it sounds like, in a sense, speaking is a very dangerous thing to do. And we put a lot of stuff out there that may or may not be true. A lot of our talking and stuff like that is just making shit up on the spot. And I often feel an extreme guilt after these podcasts going, oh God, what did I just represent there? You know what I mean? Because it wasn't what I wanted to get out. You know, I think about the podcast afterwards. I'm like, oh, I wish I'd said this and I wish I'd said that. And what I actually did say wasn't of very much value, really, you know, leading or pointing in any particular direction that I feel is of any value in terms of getting something that I want from it.
Sure, but I mean, that's mitigated by honesty, right? If we can do this while being honest about which parts of what we're saying are opinion and which parts are being reported as fact and where we're getting those facts from, then that's different from just everything you're saying is presented as if it were a fact. That's not what we do. We're constantly expressing self-doubt here.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Like, if we're unsure about something, then we don't present it as factual. We'll preface it with, well, that's, I think this.
Paradoxically, I think there's something in common or a concordance between the integrity and the expression of doubt. Whereas most people might associate integrity with certitude.
Oh,
the
right.
more
It's the
more
Socrates
confident and certain you can say something, the more believable you are. As soon as you stammer or something, or use what some people will, or use what can be called weasel terms or something, or
sophistries,
sort of not equivocations, but words that actually express the level of uncertainty there is about a certain claim. When you do that, you have more integrity because you're being honest about just how certain you are about something.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you're less right. It actually means you're more right because you're more honest about the level of certainty you have. Whereas other people who speak with more confidence or something.
Yeah, it's an example of the argument by fast talking.
Yeah,
it's like the louder and more quickly you talk about something, the more confident you seem about whether or not this thing is a fact, and the more likely people are to believe you because of that.
Right. That's like passing those omnibus bills. Like you put something
Yeah.
out, and the more large it is, the more chance you have of passing shit, kind of thing.
right. Yeah,
It's the Harper way.
Yeah, I just think that I don't want to misrepresent anything. So if I'm not sure about something, I'll either not say it or just say, well, I think this because of that.
Well, for example, you often speak on behalf of the accumulation of knowledge, or what we can say facts are, kind of thing. And these facts are, in a sense, represented as these neutral things that are the representatives of truth, and truth can be represented with things. And I mean, this is what you seem to be always advocating, is the collection of truths.
No, well, okay. The last part, maybe, yeah, I do advocate for the collection of truths. Like, I want my internal reality to be as close to objective reality as can reasonably be expected, and that means accepting as many true beliefs and rejecting as many false beliefs as I can, right? And I think the best way to be able to accumulate true beliefs would be by determining whether or not these beliefs are demonstrable in reality, right? So I believe in presenting evidence to back up your claim, because if you don't, then you can just claim anything and who cares, right? I care about what's true, and the best way of determining truth is by independent verification.
So why does someone have to claim something? Like, I'm thinking about that idea, and I always think, Mark, in terms of, because you're so rationally minded, I always think that the best thing for you is to destroy all rational thought, kind of thing. It's kind of like you're the person that never gets drunk, and I'm looking at you and I'm going, my God, if anyone needs to get drunk, it's you.
That's
you know
not true at all.
No, I'm just using it as a comparison.
An analogy.
Like, what I mean is that why do we have to represent some sort of aspect of reality? It's only when something's in question. And if something's in question, then
because if you don't guard against mistruths, then you're vulnerable to them.
Yeah,
it's like just kind of faithfully and earnestly using social media, and then being like a perfect target for these kind of memes and echo chamberings and other propaganda manipulations.
Yeah, like
that are going on
when I
social
say a
media.
claim, that could be a claim about anything. It could be just a mere assertion of something as fact. It could just be, with the example of social media, like the claim could be the Republican candidate is better suited than the Democratic candidate or whatever. That's a claim, right? Well, what is it that makes that claim believable? Is there any factual, demonstrable evidence to back that up? If not, I reject it. If there is evidence, then I'll accept it, right? If you don't question these types of things,
very reductionist, I find.
It has to be. right? Because if you don't...
Only if we're trying to do something in particular.
If you're trying to determine the truth value of a given claim, then it is important to reduce it to that bare essence, right? Because if you don't apply these critical reasoning skills, you'll be, like Gilles said, you'll be vulnerable to anything. You can just, like, if you don't think about the claims that are being circulated and you just accept them on face value.
So let's talk about what makes someone vulnerable then. What makes, like, why is it dangerous for some and why is it not dangerous for others, for example? Or is it dangerous for all and we're all vulnerable when it comes to social media, for example?
Well, I think we're all vulnerable to a certain extent. It's just what safeguards do you have in place, or what safeguards have you learned to protect yourself against that vulnerability? You know, and I keep repeating this, but I think one of the most important things is logic and critical reasoning, right? Because if you have those capacities, if you have those tools and you know how to use them, right, you can evaluate pretty much anything that you come across on social media.
Because the assumption about logic and critical reasoning is that it's...
I love that it's an assumption, by the way, but go on.
Sure. I mean,
Well,
not all assumptions are created equal.
There are certain underlying assumptions that you just have to accept.
Right.
Right. Like we don't know why reason is reasonable. We just have to accept it as something that
We
is.
don't know why reason
we don't.
is reasonable.
We don't. Why is reason reasonable? Why is reason something that...
So that's what I was going to say. The assumption is that it's a way to circumvent or to minimize
So to reduce
biases, personal biases, and subjective intuitions and things like that. So that's the assumption behind it, and we can determine or come to a consensus, I suppose, on whether or not that's a noble premise or a noble pursuit, right? Is to try and...
In order to identify something as noble, we would have to have some sort of an end game or a pointing that's occurring that would suggest we're going in this direction or that direction, no? Like,
Well, if we take the end goal of these types of evaluations as the determining of whether or not something is true, then that pursuit becomes a noble one in that specific example.
I find it's like collecting of trinkets of truth kind of thing. What are we doing with the truths that we're collecting, I guess, is always my question there.
Well, for me, it's just the accumulation of truths means that my perception of reality is as close to objective reality as it can be.
Clearer,
yeah.
Okay.
That's one way of saying it. Because, why would I believe something for which there is no, reason or evidence for that belief, right? Why?
Sure.
Just why? What point would there be in that kind of pursuit, right? I don't see any. If something is, if someone claims there's a tooth fairy and they don't have proof for that, well, why would I believe you? Why?
That belief, for example, would be a good one to believe in, because as long as you are believing it, you're getting some cash. So it's actually of value to believe in the tooth fairy.
I suppose.
So there's a truth that's not true that's worth believing in. There's an untruth that's worth believing in.
That presupposes that you value the money that you would receive.
It
from
also
believing.
presupposes that you have indulgent parents
Right.
that don't care that you're 30 and
I'm
still
30.
believing in the tooth fairy just so you can
You're
get
ripping
a
your
toonie
teeth
under
out.
your pillow.
You're now wearing dentures, collecting other people's teeth just to get some money. Mom, I left some teeth under my pillow. I'll come in.
Eventually, you actually have to rip apart your dentures to put a piece of your denture under your pillow.
Yeah. You're just hiding your dentures
Yeah.
underneath there.
It's like your mouth is like a ship of Theseus,
Nice. Is it still your mouth after you rip off all your teeth?
Is it still your teeth? Should you still be getting money for it?
There you go. You become the Robin Hood of teeth. You start handing out that money to other people. These were not my teeth. I collected this money from.
See, the spreading of false information on social media can become a dangerous thing, right? It can easily ruin people's careers.
Only if there's danger to spread.
Well, the example that I'm about to give here is one that just went around my Facebook feed. I think earlier this week. I'm not going to name names, just obviously because
Sarah, it was you, Sarah. I know it. Anyways, go on.
Damn it! How did you know? But no, petitions regularly go around social media. They get shared just all the damn time, right? And one in particular was a petition to shut down a dog sled adventure park kind of deal, right? The reason being was because somebody went to this went to this thing where they have a bunch of dog sled dogs, I guess. They might have been huskies. I don't know the type of breed it was, but they saw the dog was injured. Okay, and they took a picture of it, or they took a video of this dog and said, "Oh my God, they're treating these dogs terribly." So posted the video out of context on social media, got the Ontario SPCA involved, who threatened to shut them down if they don't take care of their animals. So they had to put out a press release saying, "Look, the dog was injured in an unrelated activity. They're still in our care. We're treating them as best we can because we love our dogs." Right?
This is like catching some video of someone limping in your office, and they're
It's
like,
like-
"Oh my God, they're abusing us!"
It's like going to a hospital and taking a video of a sick person
They're
in a
killing
hospital
us.
bed.
They're
It's like,
making them
oh my God,
sick."
these institutions are making people sick.
Right, yeah, that's exactly the type of,
Hilarious.
just bullshit, right? It's totally out of context. Yes, the dog was injured. You don't know how the dog was injured, right? There's no evidence to suggest they're mistreating these animals, but...
Louis C.K. was
That's
masturbating on them.
the kind of
But the petition...
idiotic hubris
Right.
that is like king right now.
the petition was
self-righteousness is
This
like
petition
at a
was like
peak.
500 votes away from making their goal of like 11,000 or something. Like it gained momentum to the point where, like I said, the owners had to put out a press release to defend themselves, and yet they're still in danger because the SPCA is threatening to shut them down now. Mm-hmm. This is the type of dangerous scenario I'm talking about that can get easily circulated because people do not fact check.
Right, so I guess we're looking at what is truth. We're talking about how in social media people are just pumping shit out there that isn't necessarily true. It's a small framing of something that they're now imposing it on the world as if it is the truth kind of thing. So it's kind of funny how we're talking about it's important to fact check our truths and stuff like that, but I find that the more deeply we look at something, the less we can possibly say about truth, to the point where if we were to go all the way, it would seem that we can only say that we don't know anything.
Well, that's
It's that whole
taking it to-
Socrates thing.
That,
you know?
Well, all I know is that I know nothing. But yeah, that's taking it to the extreme end, right?
Well,
To avoid infinite regress, you have to take certain things as underlying facts about reality. Right? You have to stop eventually.
Right there, you're saying have to. You're being a fascist. It's almost like language. We have no choice but to be fascists. You know, I have just said something. I am now a fascist.
Language is very limited.
That's equivocation.
Yeah.
Because there are degrees, like there's something to be said for pragmatism, right?
Sure.
Like at some point you function well when you have a certain amount of pragmatism about.
The pragmatism
About
would
your
have to be
outlook.
coming from a place, in a sense that I guess we would have to define some way.
Well, it's coming
Like,
from a place where we operate within a world where we have to interact with our environment and the people around us, right? So
Right.
pragmatically speaking, you have to make certain assumptions and just go with them, right? As long as they're factual assumptions, not like my assumption is I don't know, the sky is blue, whatever, just these things you take as fact about life and reality. They just are.
the sky being blue is
That was a stupid example. I don't
yeah, that was stupid, Mark.
It was. And the fact that I can admit it was a stupid example,
Oh, you speak the truth now.
yeah. But anyway, bad things circulating on social media.
Right. So, what is a good thing? What's a bad thing? In a sense, it always comes down to that.
There's
and in a
certain-
sense, we would have to define that.
Yeah, like
further.
I can
That's like
accept
personal.
that we can use social media as a way to further a cause, as long as that cause is determined to be something worth pursuing. And whether or not it's worth pursuing will vary depending on the individual and on whether or not the cause, in my case, is moral or adheres to my definition of secular morality. Like, will this lead to well-being in the end? Or will this
This lead not only to well-being, but the wellest being of all well-beings? You know, like there's a framework there that we have to deal with. It's like a spectrum. It's always a spectrum, and it's never an exact thing. Kind of thing.
I guess.
We're all guessing.
Yeah. The other downside, like I mentioned in the introduction there, was how easy it is to completely destroy someone's career these days with the court of public opinion, and just a mere allegation is enough
Right,
to,
everyone's
to
believing
try
everyone.
and convict someone. of
There,
something.
it's stemming from that we're very into heroes, and so then therefore we're also very into victims, and so now the victim has a voice, so that the victim then therefore becomes the hero, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like I'm not saying just
You said it.
No, I'm not.
No, you said it.
I'm not saying just ignore the victim. I'm saying okay, believe the victim. Now pursue it. Like apply.
Yeah. And the problem is with a
due
lot of these things,
process.
is that there often is no proof, of something that's a terrible thing. Like there is no proof that this is Louis C.K.'s sperm on my jacket right now, unless I have it tested, which I don't have the money for, so I can't necessarily prove it. And so I have to step forward and say, this is Louis C.K. sperm on me right now.
But the difference between just a bald ass assertion or allegation is evidence. Like with your sperm example, you can have that tested. Doesn't matter whether or not you can afford it, but the fact is the sperm can be identified.
And identified.
Yeah.
But there are some unprovable things that may be very serious things.
Of course there are. Of course there are. But when it comes to an allegation, right, especially in the current environment of sexual misconduct allegations, these things can destroy somebody, right? Because people will immediately side with the person making the accusation, and they won't apply due process. They'll immediately convict someone. Okay, well, they sexually harassed someone. Now they have to be guilty because
like the
this
Patrick
person
Brown
said so.
one, which I find is super funny because obviously he's gay.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Patrick Brown thing.
What do you want to say about the Patrick Brown thing?
I think there are the reason why he's back in the running for the leadership is because there were inconsistencies in the allegations that were made. That kind of contradict one another. So he's saying that's enough to disprove these claims, so he's jumping back in. Right.
No, but he disavowed the accusations from the very beginning. He immediately denied their validity, but at the same time, he had made an argument that he is going to resign his leadership to make sure that they're in the best position possible to beat Kathleen Wynne in the next election. But now apparently he's just pretending he never said all of that, and because he can kind of latch on to this this thing of doubt or something. He's jumping right back into the race, and whether or not that helps the party or whatever doesn't matter.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. Like I don't know if it was the wisest decision to get back into it, because like what, dude? This happened last week, and now you're back all of a sudden.
Yeah, literally less than a week later.
Right.
It's not very good politicianing, it seems. He made a mistake, and then, well, maybe it is, though. Maybe, in a sense, he'll come back now, and we'll like him even more. I don't know.
I never liked him.
Yeah, no one ever liked him in the first place.
Although maybe this will make it easier for Al Franken to come back.
Oh, God.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all he has to do is come back and go, 'cause that was stupid. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the court of public opinion has become. Do we want to call it a movement at this point? Like, is it fair to say this has become a movement?
Well, if we call it a movement, then it's immediately a movement.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a movement so much as it is like a social phenomenon. You know what I mean? Like a movement has an intentionality behind it, and
this is
has to do with identity and stuff like that. Whereas this is like a feature of culture right now.
Right.
Well, hold on. It still has to do with identity. It's just it's like the identity is the hero-victim thing. No, I guess you're right. It has no pointing feature.
I say it's
we're
not
trying to do this.
Yeah, it's not about identity because it's more about like a mechanism of how we deal with each other,
right?
Or how we act, and it's not exclusive to people of a particular philosophical or political stripe.
Right. It's more amoebas.
Yeah.
Is that even
Amorphous.
a word? Amorphous?
Yeah.
Is amoebus not a word?
Amoebus is not a word. There are
Aw.
amoebas. You're adjectivizing nouns.
There was
It's a Lukeism.
It's a Lukeism.
There was an episode of The Orville where they kind of touch on this court of public opinion thing. It was the social
Spoiler
media.
alert. Spoiler alert.
It was a social media episode where everyone has a badge where they can either like or dislike something someone said or something they did or whatever, and that like their entire democracy is based on this concept of like how many likes do you have? If you have too many dislikes, you're an undesirable member of society, and you can get arrested for doing something everyone downvotes, right? Super interesting episode.
What is it, Black Mirror?
No, The Orville.
It sounds like Black Mirror, though.
There's an
it does
episode of
sound
Black
like
Mirror that did
third
that too.
season, first episode, the one with the red hair. What's her name? It's not Ron Howard's daughter. It's
Oh, the other one? Jessica
the other
Chastain?
one. I think it's Jessica Chastain, or is it Ron Howard's daughter that's in that? I can't remember. Doesn't matter.
It's a good episode. I think.
First episode, third season. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
The one with the.
Netflix, if you're listening and want to sponsor the show, we just plugged Black Mirror, so that would be awesome. But yeah, like it's just it can become dangerous. Just these allegations without burden of proof to support.
Well, because anybody can be victimized by it then. So
Right.
ironically, you're doing something to try and empower actual victims, while what you're also doing is opening the door to create more victims.
That's right. Your empowering is not empowering. It's actually removing power.
That's
It's
it.
paradoxical.
That's it.
It creates this.
You're victimizing people.
Yeah, it's this culture of shame that we tend to apply to people who are even accused of doing something.
Bullying the bully. Yeah.
Bullying the bully.
It does not solve the issue. It is not pragmatic in the end.
Well, it's because the
has no
allegation
direction.
until you can prove the allegations as being factual, right? You're just opening the gates and just shitting on someone because someone said they did something.
And I mean, the funny thing about that is that it's just repeating the atavistic history of like putting people in the stocks, right? And having people be shamed in the public square for their crimes as a kind of sentence. And
Now we're just doing it online.
like we understood for generations and generations how kind of backwards that shit was, and now because people aren't getting educated about history, they don't know, or is it because they are educated about history but they're so cynical and egoistic now that they're like, hey, that's something that was effective back then that maybe we can bring back and use to our advantage.
Well, I think in the specific example of social media, it's just it's so easy to do that.
There you go. Yeah,
Right? Again, the tool facilitates that type of behavior just because
it's an unintended consequence.
yeah, you share something and then you comment on something. Okay, I'll finish my thought and then we'll talk about something else in a second. But like, it's just the ease with which you can destroy someone or just comment them out of existence with these allegations, right? That's an unintended consequence of the tool, you know. And I think that's just social media makes it easier to engage in that type of activity. Shell, would you? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that, social media, in a sense, was for a little while closer to free expression, but now it is controlled by, I'm going to say, the whole capitalism thing there, right? They're throwing the money at it, and then they're able to buy these ads, and then therefore manipulate us the best.
Right.
You know, the best.
And that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about. I posted on my Facebook that if we disable the comments section on news outlets or whatever, on media stories that get published by big media or whatever, then we, as a consequence, would reduce the amount of hate being spread and shared and whatnot, just by turning off the comments.
Not necessarily. You're assuming that the hate isn't in the original thing in the first place, whereas it could be.
My argument hinged on, like, if you shut down the comments, you couldn't comment hateful shit, just essentially.
We stop people
I
from
think-
speaking altogether.
I think
hold
you
on.
could do that even without necessarily disabling the comments, but disabling these kind of upvoting and downvoting and liking and unliking.
Sure, even doing that.
Disabling the validity of the
But
comments.
the point that I was getting at is that one person, again, not naming names here, but
Sarah, it was you, Sarah. I know it.
God damn it, Sarah. But they said, if you do that, if you turn off the comments, you're limiting free speech. No, just no.
Yeah, when
Well,
did,
you're limiting.
No, you're
limiting.
not. No. Hold on.
When did withholding a private space from somebody else constitute an imposition on somebody else or a denial
Well, it's an
of their
imposition
right
only because
to
it
speak
exists
in their
now,
own
and it will, if you turn it off, not exist anymore.
Free
So
speech,
therefore, you're limiting.
Free speech is literally the right to say what you want without government or without the fear of government reprisal. That's all it is.
Right.
So turning off comments doesn't mean the government's going to come after you and put you in the blockade because you said something. You're not limiting free
stockade.
Sorry, yeah, stockade by just saying shit.
Okay, so you're limiting not the free speech,
You're
but
not
you're limiting the outlet for the free speech.
So what? You take an outlet away. That you're not robbing someone of free speech. You're just turning something off that didn't exist to begin with until a few years ago.
Right. But now that it exists, so it's much like a Dorito. It's
But
like, you
not
can't take my
providing
Doritos away.
not providing someone your platform is not equivalent to denying them their right to speech.
No, I know.
That's-
I'm saying it's a denying now that it exists. Like, it is comparable to, we have created Doritos. I now know what Doritos taste like, and if you take away my Doritos, I'm going to be pissed.
I think that's
You're then taking away the freedom of me to have Doritos, kind of thing, which is.
I think that's a bit of a false parallel, but
Well, I'm saying it exists now, and so you're saying it's not limiting. It does limit the avenue for free speech because it exists already.
it may limit an avenue, but you're not limiting free speech itself.
Right, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That was their counter to my position.
Right,
It was
right,
like, well, if you turn it off, you're limiting free speech.
No,
No,
you're just
you're
limiting
not.
the avenue of free speech.
You're turning off a feature.
You still have a car, you just can't drive the roads anymore, kind of thing. This
Well,
road, like that road
no,
there
you're-
that
you're-
was comments.
You're turning a feature off.
Well, if we have cars
Here, let me put it this way: like if
and we can't drive on the roads,
okay,
what's the point of having a car?
our
No, it's more like we have cars and roads, right? And then all of a sudden there's this one guy that parks a car in his driveway and puts a sign that's saying anybody can use it whenever, and then at some point in the future he takes away that sign and
Right.
doesn't just offer that car to be used by
Or
anybody
closes down a
anymore.
road.
It doesn't mean people aren't allowed to drive their cars on roads anymore.
Right.
Okay.
I hear you. I'm just saying it's a closing down of a road,
let me
a
put
driveway,
it this
a
way:
parking
so
spot. That's all.
are newspapers limiting free speech by not publishing every single letter to the editor they receive?
Are they limiting it? No, you're right. It's limiting just an avenue, a road. So yeah, there's no limiting. There's no stopping it.
Exactly.
There's no stopping free speech.
No.
In a sense, even when free speech is outlawed, there is still free speech. It's just more limited.
No, if it's outlawed, then you no longer have the right to free speech. But yeah, no, like you have
But
freedom.
you still do freely speak. You just can't freely speak everywhere. You just have a smaller area where you can freely speak. I mean, free speech can't be, even if it's completely outlawed, it can't be stopped.
As a concept or an idea, I'll agree with you. But as a right, it can be because you'll get arrested for saying something the government doesn't like.
That would still occur now, even. These
Well,
days.
no. Like, we have the right to express whatever thought comes to our mind. You
We
can't...
have that right until we have a cop with a gun to our head that's going, "You don't say that, or I will shoot you in the head."
No. But what I mean is, like, you can say something against the government. You can say our government is a bunch of fucking idiots. Our prime minister fucking sucks, and he should step down. You can say that without reprisal.
You only don't have reprisal because you have no power. As soon as you're in a position of power, you can't
No,
actually.
the
say
reason you
something
don't have why there's no government reprisal is because it's a protected right under our Constitution. That's free speech.
No, it doesn't matter though, because it will still be taken away from you in the point if someone in power over you. Like what I'm saying is these rules that claim we are free do not actually equate to us being actually free. We're not actually free. We just are living in the illusion of freeness.
That's kind of cynical, isn't it?
Well,
illusion
to
of-
me, I'm speaking the truth. The only reason we're allowed to freely speak is because we're not in a position of any power, so it just doesn't mean anything and doesn't matter. As soon as we're put into a position of power, you can't freely speak.
What do you mean?
What I'm saying
what
is
type of
Justin
position?
Trudeau can't go up there and say whatever he wants. He has to say whatever he's told to say.
No, but he
in a sense.
can. But the fact that he is limited in what he can say as a politician doesn't mean that he is no longer in possession of freedom of speech. It just means that by virtue of his position as an elected official, he has to maintain an image. He's not robbed of any kind of freedom in doing that.
He is.
Do you think
And
Donald
having an
Trump,
image
Donald
right away
Trump has
is-
power now? Is he limited in his speech?
Because he just says whatever the
Does
fuck
he
he
not
wants.
have freedom of speech?
Yeah, I think if he were to be going off in the other direction and speaking as freely, but not supporting the agendas that he does, yeah, he would probably be shot. I would suggest, if he were a good guy saying good things, he would be more likely to die and be less free in that sense. If he were to express, no, am I wrong? Like he'd be another JFK, just
He'd be
put down.
another
Oh, he's a mad
Martin
dog.
Luther
We gotta put him
King,
down.
JFK.
Yeah. Of course. If only we killed
Why is it
our
always those guys that get killed?
I think it's because the people that kill
Those guys.
are on the
I don't
other
want to
side.
go there. We shouldn't go there, actually.
But yeah,
That's yeah.
like the comments
We'd be
section,
overextending ourselves.
the comments aspect of social media has become a prime example of the tool being used for just pure fucking
Ego
bad.
masturbation.
Yeah,
actually.
shit. Like, I was watching an episode of After Trek, the show that comes on
Why
after.
is there a ghost outside the house next door?
Oh, our neighbors haven't taken down their Halloween decorations yet.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Wow.
That's amazing.
From here, it looks like some sort of like Virgin Mary like thing that they have in front of the house.
There's like a shrouded
It's pretty
figure hanging
spooky.
outside of the neighbor's door.
That's going on Facebook. What was I saying? I started
Something real important.
Yeah, no. Something
started
about
with-
comments.
started. Oh yeah, the comment section is. So yeah, I was watching an episode of After Trek after the season finale of Star Trek Discovery.
Geek alert. Geek alert.
By the way, awesome. I'll get to that after the show.
Yeah.
But they took a comment from social media, and someone jokingly asked what social media was. And the host is like, well, it's an aspect of the media that's social, or used to be. Now it's just full of bad stuff. I think that just kind of sums up the state of social media now. It's just full of fucking horrible, bad shit.
At the same time, it's a mirror reflecting, right? We are that bad shit. We
But
are social media.
no, because like look at YouTube comments. YouTube comments have always been understood to be some kind of cesspool where like the worst aspects of people's id is manifested.
Yeah.
While society and people in real life, when you meet them, they aren't actually that shitty.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You know,
it goes
so
almost
there's a
beyond
falseness
language
to
when
it,
you're in the
even
presence
though,
of a
even
person.
though it's a vehicle for the worst aspects of people's personalities and of people's whims. You know, like the worst whims of people.
Right. Has anyone seen how Sarah Silverman dealt with that one guy that was saying terrible things about her?
No.
She just flat out asked the guy if he had any problems, like, is everything okay? You have any addiction problems? And she actually found the guy some help, and he was
Nice.
And he was all thankful about it.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, he totally flipped around and went, yeah, I'm sorry I'm a jerk, and blah, blah, blah.
Holy
I'm sorry I'm such a
shit.
troll, and
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is the? I
Sarah
didn't
Silverman.
follow this. I know who she is, but I just wasn't following the story.
What was this guy saying about her? What was he doing? Where was he saying
He called
it?
her like a bad name of some sort, and she just
On,
instead
like,
of
Twitter or
instead of
something,
just
or
calling
what?
him a bad name back, like looked into him and was like, "Hey, I just looked into your file. Are you okay, man?" Like,
So this
Your
is
file.
Your file. Your Twitter file.
Into your NSA file.
yeah.
You can do that? Yeah.
I Googled you.
I just think it would be a good idea to turn the comments off.
I,
And that is not a limit of free speech.
I like the comments being there. Why not see how people are thinking? I think it should be.
you
a
know
horror
what?
show.
I think for a journalism outlet, they don't necessarily need to be providing that platform or space for stuff that they're not actually responsible for.
Because
who
news
reads
outlets
these
are
comments
supposed to
anyways?
news outlets are supposed to be a one-way direction communication, right? This is the story. Here it is. Read it. You know that they have no.
I think you can
like,
have
they're under no obligation to let people respond to what they write.
But to me, they're just
And-
separate things. They're two different things. It's the article and then people commenting on it. They're just two different things there, and they're separate. I mean, I don't read the comments. I read the article.
I see. The thing is, I think the comment forums are something separate from what the media outfit, what its own mission is. So, like let's say CBC News doesn't necessarily need to be providing the comment form, because the comment form can be something provided in its own right by some other entity that's just about, like, its mission is to provide a comment form. And so you've got things like Reddit or Facebook or whatever, where, you know, the purpose there is could be the comment forum, while the news organization doesn't necessarily need to have its own comment form. It's just actually reporting on things and has its own.
It certainly doesn't need it.
It doesn't.
Because by providing the comment form, I think it blurs the line, because then, like, there's things on that media's platform that people can go to and pull out of it and extract from it.
And again,
it wasn't actually responsible for.
Yeah, and these comment sections, again, feed the echo chamber.
Yeah.
Because eventually you'll end up with this clustering of people who are like, yeah, that fucking sucks, blah, and they'll group together and create a chain of fuck yous and you're an asshole and all this shit.
It's evidence of what democracy is, like, outright, right? Like we're seeing now how people really think. But I mean, it's the people that are writing the who responds to news articles.
A lot of people. Like, there are a lot. Yeah, like, if you've never read the comments section on a CBC article, just take one random example and just read them.
It usually seems terrible. Like,
it is.
Well, usually
the people that speak are not kind, let's say. Either someone's just going, great, or they're going, go fuck yourselves.
Yeah. For some reason, it always comes back to fuck Trudeau.
Well, usually they're radically doctrinary, or they're like to a really cliched extent, they're specifically anti or pro a certain political stripe.
By the way, I'm not the one saying fuck Trudeau. That's just the comments that I read.
It would almost suggest that, in a sense, leaving comments on something is all about having a frame around something that isn't necessarily accurate, but that we feel is accurate, kind of thing.
Well, like, I post just these DPDs all the time about, you know, just random quotes and shit about critical thinking and whatnot, and people comment on it like, yeah, whatever, we already know, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, for one thing, with this whole we should turn off the comments post that I did, I was accused of being elitist because I'm like...
I love the elitist sling, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody else is smug, but not the people who are calling other people smug.
Right. That would then therefore make them more elitist to call it the elitist kind of thing. So you're even more elitist. No, you're elitist. No, you're elitist. You know,
right.
It just keeps on going.
So apparently I'm elitist, which I'm fine with. You know, because I'm... Whatever, fine, cool. I'm elitist then. Whatever. I would rather have...
He's so elitist,
I'd rather be smug and right than a hypocrite and...
Well, I think Richard Dawkins came out in support of elitism in the context of...
And being smug as well.
Well, he can be smug, but like his defense was, I would rather the elites be, you know, professionals in hospitals giving me the proper diagnosis and stuff like that. And that, yeah, I want them to be elite. I want them to be the fucking best at what they do. You know? I want their opinions... I want more elite people in respectable positions to voice their opinions. I want experts voicing their opinions is what I'm trying to get at.
It's funny because what an expert is someone that can dumb things down to then communicate it in a way that is...
No, I think experts are typically... I think I'm generalizing here, and I apologize for that, but
You're not an expert.
It would seem that experts are really bad at communicating what they're an expert in their field at. You know, that's why they have communication specialists.
So you would need an expert of communication to be able to communicate what the expert on non-communication has to say. So you need experts on top of experts then communicating something, and so it would be filtered through another.
Yeah, with science, for example, scientists are just fucking bad at communicating. They are like they're good at doing science, but their findings are really, really technical. So they have to find someone who can interpret that and regurgitate it in small, easily digestible packages for the rest of us.
Bill Nye becomes more of a scientist/entertainer. Scientainer. Yeah. Same with the Gleason. I don't know what's his name.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah. Gleason.
Gleason. Alrighty. So yeah, I just think it might be worth considering turning off the comments section.
Or it's worth considering turning off social media. It's not a necessity.
No.
It really isn't.
Oh, if we're back to necessity, What's necessary, guys?
Oh, no.
What's necessary?
No, not this again.
You've already talked about that. But why not turn off social media? I had a colleague just this week who quit social media due to they just don't want to deal with the comments being
Well,
thrown
I'm going to
around.
suggest why not, because it won't stop it anyways, and it will ignorance will continue to flourish and grow in other avenues and stuff like that.
Social media just makes it easier for ignorance to be more rapidly spread in certain cases.
Why does it have to be ignorance? There's also the other that is being spread as well, right?
I think it comes down to
it's still always a freedom to interpret what we want to interpret the way we want to interpret it. The author is dead. Going back to Roland Barthes, that I always like to bring up. The author is dead. We're all interpreting things in different ways, and we are the multitude, the mosaic of being that is looking at things and trying to interpret, and we're all coming from different perspectives, and there's all sorts of different ways to be right and all sorts of different ways to be wrong. So, who's to make what of what? And how? With who?
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you want to register those as your final thoughts on the issue of social media, Luke?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those are my final thoughts. I have final thoughts.
Cool. Jill?
My final thoughts? I don't have final thoughts.
Yeah, who has final thoughts? There's no final thoughts.
I don't know. I think maybe we should all check our egos and be aware of.
You're calling me elitist?
No. I mean people who use social media just in an unaware fashion to just try and get likes and there's an obvious element of narcissism there associated with social media, and let's just remember it and not pretend it isn't there. If you're posting about this new thing you got, or how great something is that you're about to engage in or whatever, maybe realize that that's just what we used to call bragging, and that we used to say you're a fucking shitty person for bragging and
look at my new car. Look at the car.
You're a goddamn douchebag right now. Why is it no longer to be a douchebag to do that shit as long as you're doing it on Facebook? I don't know. That's my final thought. It's very judgy and angry, I guess.
It can be very narcissistic. It's
I hate
also
narcissism.
It's also become a public family album in a lot of cases. Instead of people having photos of their kids in a nice spiral bound book that they can pass on for generations or whatever, it's look at my baby.
Those books were never passed on for generations. The next generation looks at it and goes, "Yeah, I don't really care, Mom."
But whatever. That aside, it's just, here are my kids. Everyone must look at them now on social media. Here's my vacation with my 5 children. Just keep looking at my. I don't care.
It's not even that. It's not even that they would necessarily think everybody must look at them. It's that they think everybody is equally in a potential to want to look at them, or for it to even be reasonable for them to want to look at them.
Right.
You're right. I put up pictures of my vomit and wonder why people aren't looking at it. Look at my beautiful vomit. It's up there with looking at your children, kind of thing.
I think that feeds back into the narcissism idea.
Just to think that somebody else should or could
want to.
validly legitimately have an interest in looking at your own.
I suppose a person's looking for
Personal shit.
validation,
I don't know.
I had a
It's
kid. Look at my
weird.
kid. It's good, eh? I had a kid. It's a good thing.
Yeah,
Look at my meal. It's a good meal, right? Hey, guys. Hey, this is good.
social media is very good for people seeking validation, right? It just is
But the seeking of validation, too, is coming from, in a sense, a questioning place. And so a person speaking...
Yeah, but then it legitimizes the concept of seeking validation,
Yeah.
and then if you don't get it, then that can have
Oh,
weird negative
yeah.
consequences. Look at these kids that if they don't get a certain number of likes for their Facebook post, then they suddenly get suicidal and shit.
Right. I think there were studies done on this. I think I remember reading about them, but no, you're right. Anyway, my I guess my closing thought on the issue of social media would be that the need to fact check the information that you come across on social media, just to make sure that you're not being duped, right? Just check things, fact check, very important. Apply critical reasoning to what you see and read on, well, not just social media, but in general, I guess, but especially with things spread on social media. It's become, as we've demonstrated with the Russian indictment, it can be very easy for your opinion to be manipulated. And in order to guard against that, you should probably be well armed in logic and critical thinking.
Well armed. It's a war.
It is. It's an info war. Shout out to Alex Jones if you want to call in and sponsor the show.
Rage and Colin.
They're making our frogs gay!
Making our frogs gay! Ah! This has been Critical Junction episode 33. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep
Go
thinking...
fuck yourself. Sorry.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
You totally stepped on Mark's new sign-off.
I'm sorry. I stepped on your new sign-off. Go ahead, do your sign-off. Do your stinking sign-off, Mark. Come on, let's go.
Let's make this the inaugural of the new sign-off. This total fuck up of an inaugural.
It's ruined now.
Do it.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking critically.